Hi friends, and welcome to today's episode of pianoTV. We haven't done a tutorial in a while, so I figured this was the right time, especially since now we're going to start rolling through grade 3 level material on this channel. And I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to start our grade 3 adventures with Minuet in G. A really famous minuet, which wasn't written by Bach. It's written by a guy named Petzold, but it's been attributed to Bach for many years. This piece is in the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach, which is a great collection for like sort of early intermediate to intermediate level Baroque pieces. And this is also a piece that we featured in our video Bach in the Movies. So if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. So let's get started. So as we just talked about, Minuet in G is a really famous piece, and I'd be super surprised if you've never heard it. And we are going to listen through it in a moment. I'm going to play through it, and you can follow along, and we'll talk all the details. But first, let's talk about the backstory. This is from the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach, circa 1725. And this was a notebook that Bach compiled for his wife, Anna Magdalena, hence the title. Now, everyone thought Bach wrote this piece up until about 1970, until they realized it was a dude named Christian Petzold who actually penned the piece. We don't know a lot about Christian Petzold. We know that he was a really gifted organist. He was an overall good composer, very talented, very skilled, but his music doesn't survive to this day. So, sorry, Christian Petzold. This minuet is actually compiled as a pair. It's meant to be played as a pair. So we have this one in G major, and then its twin, kind of like darker twin, in G minor. And they go together. But today's video, we're just going to focus on the famous minuet in G major. So let's go to the keyboard. The sheet music can be found on the website imslp.org. I like using the version that says it has the fingering. Another thing that you could do is you could look up the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach and just download the whole collection, and then you'll find the minuet there. Let's start by looking at the overarching details of the piece, specifically what key is it in, what song form is it written in, and also what is a minuet. So to answer the first question, what key is it in, all we have to do is take a look at the key signature. So there's one sharp in the beginning. So what this tells you, there's only one major key and one minor key that have one sharp. So this is either going to be in G major or E minor. Now, if you remember from the title, it's called Minuet in G, so that makes our job a little bit easier. This song is in the key of G major. And what that means is everything is going to kind of center around the key of G. You can see that we open with a G chord, and when we finish sections, it's going to be finishing with G, and so on. The other main thing when you're in the key of G that you have to watch out for is just this sharp. So you have an F sharp in this piece, which means that every time you come across an F, just make sure you're playing it as a black key. Okay, so the second question is, what song form is Minuet in G written in? Well, looking through this entire page, you can see a pattern. So you have this first, I was physically pointing to the screen. You can't see my finger. This is all we got. Okay, so you can see a repeat at the end of the third line, and then if we scroll down even further, scrolling down, you can see another repeat here. So it's kind of blocked off into two sections. So the next thing we are going to talk about are ornaments. So the previous video we talked about ornaments in depth, and that's going to be a really useful resource and reference for us now. So the very first ornament you have, and you have this several times in the A section, is something that we call a mordant. And this mordant has a line through it, which is going to be an important detail. Then somewhere in the second line, we have an appoggiatura, which just looks like a little baby note with a fully grown note. And at the very end of the piece, very end, we have another mordant, except this one's different because it doesn't have a line cutting through it. Okay, so let's start with the first mordant, which we would call a lower mordant. And we know it's a lower mordant because it has the line going through it. And that's telling us that we need to go in a downward direction for this turn. So if you remember from the previous video, a mordant is just a quick little turn. All right, so I just drew in this tiny little mordant. It's just a quick little turn. So if your main note is a C, you start the mordant on C, and then you dip down to a B, and then go back up to the C. So it's like a really quick little CBC. So one thing that's really important with mordants is we want to start this turn before the beat so that we land on this C, the like original C, at the start of beat 2, okay? So if this note's beat 1, 1, da 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 dum. So 1, da 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 dum. We want this whole turn to be finished on beat 2. And I think it'll just be easier to go to the keyboard for this, and then we'll talk about it there. So here's our notes, just plain as they are without the mordant, just so you can get a feel for it. Okay, so that's our beat. We need to make sure we're hopping from the E on beat 1, 1, 2, and then landing on the C on beat 2. So when we added our mordant, we want to make sure we sneak it in just before the beat. So right? So you want to watch that. I hear mordants sometimes played like this. They kind of start on the beat. So you want to make sure your mordant is just finishing as the beat hits like this. That was kind of in slow motion. You hear how it just kind of sneaks before. So again, just make sure you're not doing this. Do you hear the difference? It's just where you want to... So hopefully you hear the difference there. So next on line 2, we have our little appoggiatura. And these look and sound a lot scarier than they are in reality. Basically, all this is telling you is that your main tune, like your melody, is this note A. That's the, regular sized note. But what we want to do is play this tiny little B first, like an eighth note. You can see it's written like an eighth note. And this is going to give us like a melody delay. It's going to postpone that resolution note, that A, to create a little bit of extra dramatic suspense. So one thing where people sometimes get mixed up with appoggiaturas is they try to play them really, really fast. But you don't want to play this fast. You just want to play this like a regular old eighth note, matching it up at the start of the beat. So da-dum, 1 and... I actually think the appoggiatura in this one's a little bit open to interpretation. So we have our notes. So without the appoggiatura first. Okay. So with the appoggiatura, we kind of delay it. Now it's written as an eighth note, and that's how I played it in this version. So if this is your beat, 2 and 3. Okay, but another way you could play it, and I hear this in different versions as well, is playing it like a quarter note. I've heard it both ways, so I really think that's just open to interpretation. It's really not complicated because you don't have to play it fast. And finally, the last mordant of the piece, and this one, as mentioned earlier, doesn't have a line, and that gives it a little bit of a different meaning. So this is going to mean it's an upper mordant. So the line going through it means that it goes lower, but this time we're going to do that quick little turn, and we're going to head in an upward direction. So what we are going to do slightly before the beat is we're going to play a B, turning up to a C, and then back down to a B. So BCB, you're going to do that really, really fast, and making sure that you're landing on the original B at the start of beat 2. So your turn is just like coming right before the main beat hits, and we'll look at the keyboard for that as well. And then finally we have our little upper mordant. So I'm going to just play the tune without the mordant first so you can hear it. So that's the very, very last little part of the piece. So with the lower mordant, you want to follow the same rules as the upper mordant. You want to finish it as soon as the beat hits. So like this. You hear how I'll do it in slow motion. Right? So again, you want to watch that you're not doing this instead. Do you hear the difference? So that second time I started the mordant on the beat, but you want to finish the mordant on the beat when you have it fast. If you're finding the ornaments tricky at first, which is entirely normal, I always recommend to learn the piece without them first, because that way you can get a really clear sense of the tune without the ornaments wrecking the shape of the melody. So I would just like for example, this one I just go E, C, D, E, F, G, and I just like completely skip the turn until you really got that part down. If you remember the previous video, kind of used a Christmas tree as an example, right? Because, you know, you put ornaments and decorations on a Christmas tree. So you want to kind of think of it in that your melody is the tree, and that's the structure of your piece. And then the ornament, we just want to put on like a light little ornament so that it doesn't weigh the tree down. Because if you added, say, like a bowling ball to the tree, the whole thing would sag, or like maybe it would fall, and that would be bad. So we don't want that happening to our melody. We don't want to make our ornaments like bowling balls that kind of destroy the integrity of the melody. Remember that it's the style in Baroque music to keep a certain amount of detachment in your playing. So you're generally never going to see left-hand slurs in Baroque music. You don't see them here. So what you want to do in that case is you want to keep them not staccato, but you don't want to play them smooth and connected. And the same thing goes for the right hand. Sometimes slurs are written in Baroque melodies and sometimes they're not. So you just have to use your best judgment. So one good rule of thumb is whenever you have eighth notes, it usually makes sense to give them a slurred sound, because it would sound really stupid if we were to, you know, da 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 da, if you were to divide up the sounds of the eighth notes. But the quarter notes sound really good broken apart a little bit. Da, 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 instead of, you know, playing that all slurred. The only time you would really hold your left-hand notes is in this example near the end of the piece where you have a little bit of overlapping. So you can see that there's this left-hand B that you actually have to hold for 2 counts. And then on beat 2, you have another left-hand note that your thumb is going to reach up and play. And you're going to hold these notes at the same time together. So you press this one on beat 1, you hold while you press this one on beat 2, and then on beat 3 you lift them both and press a new note. This is a technique that we call finger pedaling. So let's go take a look at that on the keyboard. So there really are just 3 bars where you're finger pedaling. So all it means when you finger pedal, as we were just talking about this, but just to show you, is that you hold one note and keep holding it even though another note plays. So like this. You're kind of dragged that lower finger underneath while the top note kept moving. So then there's the 4th last bar of the song. You kind of have the same thing where you're holding it under 2, 3. So you get just a little bit of an overlapping sound, and it sounds really nice. You get kind of a slightly, I don't know, just like mellows it out a little bit. And that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. As always, the PDF will be linked below, so if you want to go over to IMSLP, or you can just click the link and you'll find the sheet music for free available. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to everyone who helps make these videos possible. Come hang out with me on social. I exist on Twitter as pianoTV, I exist on Facebook as pianoTV, I exist as Allysia Face on Instagram because it's my name plus the word face. So if you're into that, you can come hang out with me over on those avenues, and I'll catch you in the next video. So you have your starting note, the C. Every single time I draw a circle. So you have your starting note on C, and then, okay, I'm going to draw this. There we go.